Good morning, all of you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay, so today, in continuation with the same history chapter, the national movement, today we'll have a look at the Rowlatt Act. Okay, so in 1919, the British government they passed this Rollat Act. Now, according to this act, the Britishers they could arrest anyone without a warrant and imprison them without a trial for a period of 2 years. Now, this was specially for the political prisoners, those who protested against the British rule and all that. So, without any proper papers, they could arrest them, and so this act curbed the freedom of expression, and because the people were not allowed to express how they felt about the government and about the people who were ruling, and Mahatma Gandhi, Muhammad Ali Jinnah both criticized the act as cruel and devilish, and as a result many satyagraha sabhas they were set up to launch a movement against the proposed Rollat Act. Now, Gandhiji he gave a call for a nationwide strike or a nationwide hartal on 6th April 1919, and the people they responded with unprecedented, means never seen before or never known before enthusiasm. People responded with never known before, never seen before enthusiasm, and there were hartals and strikes and processions and meetings and demonstrations all over the country against this Rollat Act. Okay, then on 13th April 1919, a large but unarmed crowd, so a large
Good
crowd,
morning,
they,
ma'am.
good morning, Wahib. A large crowd had gathered at Amritsar to protest against the arrest of uh, two important leaders, Saifuddin Kichlo and Dr. Satyapal. And what happened on 10th April, that is missing here. So on 10th April, the people they were having a peaceful protest against this proposed Rollat Act, and in that during that meeting and during that protest, these two national leaders or important leaders they were arrested, and so on 13th April people gathered together to protest against their arrest. And now it was also the day of the Baisakhi festival, so many people have also come from the nearby areas to celebrate this Baisakhi and to participate in the Baisakhi fair. And so they all were gathered, some to protest, some for the Baisakhi fair, and they all were there at the Jallianwala Bagh. And so General Dyer, when he got to know about this, he was the military commander of Amritsar. He decided to terrorize the people and set an example before them. And now Jallianwala Bagh was a large open space, and it has only one entrance, and that means you could say the same. The entrance was the exit. Otherwise, leaving that one entry and exit point, there were no exit or entry. There were no exit point also. So there was just one gate that led to it, and you can come out also from the same gate. And General Dyer he commanded his army unit to surround the Bagh, and he closed the exit, and with his and then he ordered his troops to fire upon the unsuspecting people with rifles and machine guns, and as a result thousands were killed and wounded. Um, and I think you all must have heard also so much about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the Jallianwala Bagh tragedy. It shocked the Indians, and because it was the people involved. Now, many of the people they did not know that something like this will happen, because, like I told you, many of them have come to attend the Baisakhi fair, and so it really shocked the Indians. And Rabindranath Tagore he also renounced his title of knighthood in protest against this incident. So earlier the Britishers they were in the habit of giving awarding titles, and so Rabindranath Tagore he renounced his title of knighthood in protest. Now, soon after the First World War, now Britain and its allied parties they partitioned Turkey, and First World War. What was the duration, the period of the First World War? Does anyone know here?
Around 1915. Around 1915. This much I know.
Okay. Yes, anyone else? Okay, so it was from 1914 to 1918, and so after the First World War, the Britain means Allies, the Allied parties, they partitioned Turkey, and the ruler of Turkey, that is the Sultan or the Khalifa, his powers were also curtailed, means lessened, and this made the Muslims all over the world and even the Indian Muslims very angry, and because they wanted the Khalifa or the Sultan of Turkey to be allowed to control uh, to have control over the Muslim sacred places in the Ottoman Empire. Now, this Ottoman Empire was a very huge, big, powerful Muslim empire over present day Turkey and its surrounding areas, and so the Indian Muslims, they did not like this. They were angry because they wanted the Khalifa to retain his power, and then so in protest in 1920, a movement was organized under the leadership of two Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali, and this was along with the help of Maulana Azad, Hakim Ajmal Khan, and Hasrat Mohani. And Mahatma Gandhi, he also supported the Khilafat movement. So as a result, the the Muslims, they also got the support of the Congress and the nationalists for this movement, and now, why were the Indian Muslims enraged? It was because the Sultan of Turkey, he was considered as the religious head or the Caliph or the Khalifa of all Muslims of the entire world, and that is why, since he was known as the Caliph or the Khalifa, that is why this movement came to be known as the Khilafat movement, and so this movement, it gave a call for non-cooperation. Now, Gandhiji was of the view that the Britishers were able to establish their rule in India because the Indians cooperated with them, and he thought that if the Indians did not cooperate with the British, then the British rule in India, it will come to an end. And so the movement this movement gave a call for the non-cooperation movement, and hence non-cooperation movement, and this non-cooperation movement, it was merged with the movement against the repression in Punjab, means what happened after the Jallianwala Bagh massacre and the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, and after that also the Britishers, they came down heavy with repression on the people, and if you read in some of the books, the nationalists, they were made to uh, bow on the ground, run and rub their noses on the ground, and so all that was done to terrorize the people, so that they will not lift up their head and protest against the British rule. And so this movement, this non-cooperation movement, it was because of three things. First, because of the repression in Punjab, then the British policy towards Turkey, and third, for the attainment of Swaraj. Now, the non-cooperation movement, it was to unfold in stages. The first stage was the surrender of titles. Like I told you, the British government, they were in the habit of giving titles to the people, and for their extraordinary work, or if they had been very good at their work or famous at their work, so they were given titles. So the first stage was the surrender of these titles to, and then the second was boycott. Now here, when we talk about boycott, it was not boycotting only British goods, it was boycotting everything British. That means uh, British goods, British schools, British colleges, British offices, British law courts, and even the British legislatures. So even the legislatures, people, those, that meant that people who were there already in the legislative assemblies, they had to resign from that. So the second stage was that, and uh, the Congress has planned that if after these two stages the Britishers, they came down on them with a repression, then they will launch a full-fledged civil disobedience movement. Now, civil disobedience is deliberate defying of laws or deliberate breaking of laws. Now, when we say deliberate defying of laws, obviously we mean only those laws which are discriminatory, and not laws which are there for the upkeep of the society or for the law and order. So only those which are discriminatory against the people. Okay, so now during this 1991 and 1992, the non-cooperation movement, it gained more strength, gained more force, momentum, and thousands, as a result, thousands of students, they left their government schools and colleges and joined schools and colleges which were run by nationalist or Indian schools, and hundreds of lawyers, including C.R. Das, Motilal Nehru, Rajendra Prasad, they all gave up their legal practice. Then British titles, they were surrendered, and then there was a boycott of foreign goods. Then picketing of liquor shops, means they did not allow the shops selling liquor to sell their wares, and people used to stand in front of them, not allow them to sell liquor. Then it also included the boycott of legislatures, like I told you. And then there were huge bonfires of foreign clothes were organized all over the country, and as a result, because the people were not using things British and they were boycotting things were British, so the import of foreign cloth, it fell drastically between 1920 to 1922. Now this movement, it transformed the freedom struggle, or we can say it was the first mass movement. Before that we have had protests and uprisings against the British, but this was the first mass movement, because it transformed the freedom struggle into a mass movement. So many people, they came and joined this, like we just now did that students also, they left their schools and they joined. So it was joined by so many groups and sections of people, and it involved the entire population and spread to all parts of the country. So this non-cooperation Khilafat movement spread to all parts of the country. People were demanding Swara, they wanted independence from the British rule. Okay, in Khera, Gujarat, the peasants, farmers, they organized a non-violent campaign against the high land revenue demand of the British. So the in Khera, the peasants, they were asked to give very high land revenue or high land taxes, and in coastal Andhra, the liquor shops were picketed. So in Khera, Gujarat, the peasants, they organized a non-violent campaign against the high land revenue. Then in Andhra Pradesh, liquor shops, they were picketed. In the Guntur district of Andhra Pradesh, tribals, during forest satyagrahs, send their cattle into the forest without paying the grazing taxes. Now under the British rule, they imposed various laws and various taxes, and so forest laws were also imposed. And under the forest laws, what happened, earlier these pastoralists, who are the pastoralists, any idea? Class 8 pastoralists, ever heard the name before? No one? Okay, now
Ma'am,
हाँ बेटा.
the land used for keep or grazing, like from that.
Okay, yes, so these pastoralists were basically people who moved from one place to another with their large herds of cattle, sheep, and buffaloes, camels, donkeys. All right, and so basically, these are you could say something like shepherds, and who move from one place to another. So the pastoralists, earlier they moved along from one place to another in search of pasture land for their herds from one place to another, and without any restrictions. Means we are talking when the Britishers were not here, but after the Britishers came here, they imposed so many restrictions on the movement of these pastoral groups. And earlier, these pastoralists, they used to take their herds and cattle in the forest areas also to graze on the saplings and on the forest floor. And many people, tribals who were living in these areas, for them, sometimes they picked firewood from the forest, and the flowers of the mahua tree and all that, and that honey and all, so they picked up that, and it helped them in their livelihood also. But under the forest acts they could not enter these forests, and before entering some of the forests they had to pay grazing taxes. Some forests the entry was totally now not allowed, and in some forests the entry was allowed, but that was only for a specific period of time, and then they had to pay grazing tax. So under the forest satyagraha they send their cattle into the forest without paying any grazing taxes, and uh, like I told you, they were protesting because the Britishers they have restricted the use of the forest resources. Okay, and in many forest villages, the peasants they proclaim Swaraj because they believe now British Raj was going to be over and Gandhi Raj was going to be established. Then in Sindh as well as in Bengal, the Khilafat movement it gained momentum, and it because of that there was enormous communal unity, because this non-cooperation movement it combined Khilafat movement along with it, so there was unity among the Hindus and the Muslims, and this provided strength to the national movement. Then in Punjab, the Sikhs they sought to remove the corrupt mahants from the gurudwaras, and so means everywhere the people they tried to be a part of this movement, and they tried to do things which were right, and remove the evils that were prevalent there. So like that is why in Punjab the Sikhs they removed the corrupt mahants from the gurudwaras. Then slowly they got identified with the non-cooperation movement there. Then in Assam tea gardens, the workers who were working there on the plantations they shouted Gandhi Maharaj ki jai, and they demanded an increase in their wages. So they took Gandhiji's name for all this, and they thought that now Gandhi Raj will be established. Then these workers who were working on the plantations, tea plantations, they left the British owned plantations, and declaring that they were following Gandhiji's wishes. And now, very interesting fact that in the Assamese Vaishnava songs, the wherever there was a reference to Lord Krishna, it was substituted by Gandhi Raja. And so for the common people Gandhiji he was kind of a messiah and a savior, someone who has come to rescue them from their misery, from their poverty, from their problems. And so like all sections of people thought that he had come to deliver them and to rescue them. And so the peasants believed that Gandhiji he would help them in their fight against the zamindars. The agricultural laborers believed that Gandhiji would provide them land. Agricultural laborers, we're talking about landless laborers or landless farmers, those who don't have land and who work on land which is owned by someone else. So they thought that Gandhiji would provide them land. Then so like what we mean to say that Gandhiji's name was taken and thought that he will provide solution to all the problems. Then in some places ordinary people they credited Gandhiji with the work that they have done. With Gandhiji had nothing to do about, like in the peasants of Pratapgarh in Uttar Pradesh, they managed to stop the illegal removal or eviction of the tenants, but they thought that it was Gandhiji who has done it for them. And at other times, whenever they wanted to do anything that was against the ideals of the Congress or Gandhiji, and but still they used the name of Gandhiji for everything to confirm. They took name of Gandhiji. Like that, okay, so they have got a moral license to do all that because Gandhiji has said to do it. So like people for the people, for the common people, Gandhiji was a sort of a messiah or a savior. So the non cooperation movement it was on. And then but as we know that Mahatma Gandhi he was against all sorts of violence, and this non cooperation movement was to be a non violent revolution, or not exactly a revolution, non violent movement. And uh, so like I told you that the third stage of the non cooperation movement was to be the civil disobedience movement. So on 1st February 1922 Mahatma Gandhi announced that he will start the civil disobedience movement until the Britishers they release the political prisoners, those who have been arrested under the new powers that the police have got because of this Rollat Act. And so He demanded that these political prisoners should be released and the censorship on the press also to be removed. Then on 5th February, a Congress procession of 3,000 peasants at Chauri Chaura, which was a village in Gorakhpur district of UP, and so they were having a peaceful procession, and they were fired about by the police. And the people became so enraged, so angry that they set fire to a police station, thereby killing 22 policemen. And when Gandhiji heard about this, he called off the non-cooperation movement at once. So the non-cooperation movement was called off abruptly, and it ended abruptly because Gandhiji was against all forms of violence, and he believed and he said that the people were still not ready for non-violent passive resistance, and so he called off this movement. Now immediately after this movement was called off, so now there were differences among the Congress as how now to move on and not to let this movement, this non-cooperation movement, turned into passivity. Means they wanted this movement to remain active. So like one group among the Congress, like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru, they thought that this boycott to the legislatures, it should end, and the Indians should be allowed to participate in the election to the legislative assemblies and be a part of the legislative assemblies, and from inside try to destroy or stop the work of the Britishers. And but the other group, they wanted that no, they should continue with their constructive program and spread of education among the masses, removal of the social evils from the society, and they should continue what they had been doing. So in the mid 1920s, the Gandhians, they were able to expand their support or extend their support through social work in the villages, and this proved to be very useful when later on the civil disobedience movement, it was launched in 1930. Then in the 1920s, two important developments took place. One was the formation of the Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh, that is the RSS, and the second of the Communist Party of India. Now, there was one more small group of people in some parts of the country who believed the British rule could be overthrown by force, and that they will not be able to remove the Britishers here without force or without the use of arms and weapons. Now, they were called as revolutionaries. So, we had revolutionaries such as Bhagat Singh and his comrades. Comrades are like fellow members, and so they wanted to fight the colonial rule with the help of a revolution by workers and peasants, and they thought that now these revolutionaries were not averse to using violence or using arms and weapons also, if and so required. Now in 1928, a commission was led by Lord Simon, and this arrived in India to examine future reforms. They had to look in the Constitution of India and suggest further reforms in the constitution here. And now this commission uh, did not have any Indian representative or any Indian delegate in it, and so all the parties here in India, they boycotted the Simon Commission. So here we are having a look at some of the important events which took place during that time. Then in those years, then December 1929, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, he was made the Congress of the Indian National Congress, and while they were having their yearly session uh, of the Congress, now in 1929 they had their session at Lahore. So at the Lahore session of the Congress in 1929, the Congress, they passed a resolution and declared that now they wanted Purna Swaraj for India. Now, Purna Swaraj or complete independence was going to be their objective, and they will not settle for anything less other than complete Swaraj or complete independence, Purna Swaraj or complete independence. And this decided that 26 January 1930 onwards, they will celebrate each 26 January as the Independence Day. And because, and later on this day, because of its historical importance, it was chosen to call India a republic. Alright, so I think for today the time is over. We'll stop here. Have you all understood? Any confusions? You want to ask anything? Class 8?
No, ma'am.
Okay.